What's the crack, folks? Welcome to another hobby hangout. It's myself, Scarnier, or Dwayne, as always. And our special guest today is Mechanical Frog.
Hello, glad
What's,
to be here.
what's the crack? So you run the Mechanical Frog channel. So what do you do? Like, introduce yourself to the people. What's your name? What do you do? What are you into?
Sure. Mechanical Frog. I run a YouTube channel that's primarily Battletech these days. It's kind of evolved over a little bit over time, but lots of hobbying and story writing and all sorts of shenanigans. Trying
Cool.
to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I've seen that. You're like, I really like your lore stuff, and then you do like your painting videos as well, and even your little clips. Like you've got a lot going on, and you've got a fair bit. You're keeping yourself busy. Like you
Yeah.
do pump out the old content. Look, why BattleTech? Like what did you start off doing BattleTech, or was it just something you sort of went into, or
Well, I've always been a huge Battletech fan going back to early teens. But when I did start the channel, it was mostly going to be like a painting tutorial channel, and I was mostly at the time was really into Warhammer 40K, and so that's what I wanted to do with the channel, and it just never really took off. And it wasn't until I kind of rediscovered BattleTech was a thing, and wow, this is what I really love doing anyway. So I may as well kind of focus on what I loved, and I think the audience has come as a result of that.
I get you. Yeah,
So,
I know the feeling. I was sort of focusing on 40k orcs back in the day, and then fell off the bandwagon for a long time. And then once BattleTech once I jumped on the BattleTech bandwagon when they started coming out with the new box sets. I think that's like I always liked how BattleTech played, but because of where I am in Ireland, it's hard to get a hold of the miniatures and the old sculpts that they had, so they were expensive, and I wasn't too enamored with them. But once they started doing the new box sets, yeah, this is my new core game for me, and yeah, it's been a bit crazy ever since. You know what I mean? But it's good fun. I enjoy it. I'm
oh yeah, great game.
I'm
Yeah, we started playing. I don't know. Should I share my get into BattleTech
Oh
story?
yeah, totally, man, totally. Yeah, yeah, you're in the right place for it. Go
Kind of
for it.
amusing.
Go for it.
Um, yeah, this was so 1992-ish. Uh, the those of you who aren't old enough to remember 1992, kind of on the end of the days of the kind of scared of the satanic stuff in popular culture.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
so my older brother came home one day with a Dungeons and Dragons book. And bless my parents, they were just doing what they thought was right. I don't fault them at all. But it was made very clear that Dungeons and Dragons was not welcome in the house. And so the book went away, and I think it was within a couple of days he came home with the second edition for BattleTech. And from there on out, we were just a BattleTech house. So we sat down and played, gosh, know how many games. Got my friends into it, and we had a nice little cohort of games. Kind of sit down with the Raw Powertha catalog and figure out how much allowance money we had to spend on mechs and do an order. It was pretty awesome.
Nice.
And then I didn't. I when we got through to high school and college, it just kind of faded away. And of course, the dark age. Most BattleTech fans kind of hit that dark age time period and like, wow, maybe I should take a break. And I did for a long time. It wasn't until that Kickstarter, the first Kickstarter came up, that I pulled the mechs out and said, you know what, I'm going to start painting these again and playing the game, and it's just been growing since then.
And enjoying it. Yeah, it is pretty amazing. Like I said, I was aware of BattleTech before they went into the Click Tech Dark Age. Like I tried it out, and then seeing what you were talking about there, where a lot of players sort of went away from the game at that stage because it was sort of being taken in a different direction by
Mhm.
WizKids at the time, wasn't it? I think it was Was it WizKids? I
Yeah.
think it was WizKids. And now to see what Catalyst have done with it, with the new box sets, and then the Kickstarter itself sort of exploding, it's always interesting, like because I've stayed, we've helped to get the ball rolling in our city Luckily, I had a few veteran players who have played it consistently through the years, and I tormented them enough to be like, "Hey, maybe we should do like a gaming night. You know what I mean? Once fortnightly or whatever, and get the ball rolling." And yeah, it's been interesting to see players popping up because you get old school players who are like, "Oh my god, Battletech! I have some of this in the attic and want to play." And then you've got like new people coming in who don't know what this is at all, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool!" Like, you know what I mean? So it's nice to see that. I think it's an interesting story where you'll get like veteran players and new players coming together, people who've left the game and come back, and new people. And people coming from other war games where they're like, I'm looking for something different, and then they're like, oh, I'll try Battletech. So there's a nice mixed bag going on, and it's through the generations as well. Like we've some young players, older players. I like that about it.
Yeah, I think one of BattleTech's biggest strengths is the fact that most players are just so over the moon that somebody else is into the game that they're just super welcoming. Like it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, whatever. They're like, oh, you like BattleTech? Let's talk BattleTech.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they want to share that passion, and that's a really amazing thing. Having been involved with like 40K for a while, it's not universal. BattleTech's pretty amazing though. In that respect.
I find that interesting how there can be such a difference in culture in player bases between two games. You would think that it would be the same, but if like it's very like I found BattleTech to be very open. Like people are like the whole idea of proxying miniatures. Like and it doesn't then they don't have to be exactly. It's not like WYSIWYG and stuff. So it's very approachable and open, and that's sort of like the standard or the norm. It's kind of refreshing coming from a more restricted kind of gaming culture. You get me? And it's interesting.
Yeah, the fact that BattleTech as a game system is so flexible probably helps with that too. Just being able to choose the rules you want to use. You're agreeing with your partner. Oh, we're going to use weather this time, or this, that, or the other rule set. Really helps kind of make the game feel easier to get into. I think. Like trying to get into 40K. So I'll just keep bringing up this example because that's my most recent obsession. I got a bunch of models still that need to be done. The rule set for 40K is so intimidating. And it's hard to piece out, oh, we're not going to use this, but we'll use this.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to do as with Battletech, where you're just going to agree, all right, let's just do base rules plus this one thing, just to make it fun.
Or let's try out this rule this week. Or maybe if we use like the alternate rules for machine guns, what effects will that have on the game? And did we like it? Did we not? Will we continue to use it going forward? Type of thing. Yeah, I like that about Battletech. It really is sort of make the game your own. A lot more than other games I've come across. Not to shit on other games, of course, but you know what I mean. You're not being shoehorned into play a specific way, or this has changed now, so you can't do this anymore. There's not, you know what I mean? There's a lot more freedom. That's like the core game, and go with what you want.
Yeah. Or you'd spend countless hours building an army, and now you're locked into that army. Like, oh, you painted your models this color, so now they have to be this army that has this specific
faction
like,
with these specific
you want to play
rules.
Something else. Oh, you have to go paint a brand new army and paint that one red instead of green.
Yeah, it did get a bit ridiculous at the end. But it's fun, and I find it funny with some players coming from 40K where they still have that sort of conditioning. Where they're like, oh, it needs to be exactly, this variant of mech, and it needs to have that specific color scheme. And it's like, no, dude, you can do what you want. You have like 4 miniatures. You can make any lance in the game now. You just need like a record sheet, and it's fun for people to experience that, to see their. Oh, really? Can you? All right, cool. It's like, yeah, it's encouraged, like, the freedom that comes with it for players. Are you going to be painting anything yourself this evening, or have you any plans hobby-wise? What have you got?
A few things here, but I tend to kind of tunnel vision while I'm working, so I'm not sure I want to start on anything.
Well, what I've found is base coats. Base coats are the way to go. Nothing detailed. Anything detailed kills conversation is what I've found myself. But anything like base coats or undercoating or generic stuff, and the brain seems to, still be capable of some form of conversation without tunnel visioning too much. We'll go on to the chat anyway, and we'll see who's here and who's tormenting us. We've Lorcan, what's the crack? Sadie Spaghetti's here. We've Dystopian 1984. Locust Labs, hello. A few comments. Orker saying Dark Age isn't a bad game. It's just not Battletech. Age of Destruction was really good. QOL upgrade, but came too late in the game's lifespan. Interesting. Until the new resurgence, Dark Age sold better mini-wise than OG Battletech. Yeah, there's quite a lot of people who have like mountains of that clicky tech stuff, which is surprising.
Friends who bought into it and were really into it. I think I bought one box and I opened it up and like I wanted a mech inside, but I got a tank. And like I don't like blind boxes.
Yeah.
So like I can't do this. So
which is interesting because the salvage boxes are kind of blind boxes, but at least you're sort of getting mechs. I don't know. They tend to be pretty popular with folk. Like, what are your local group like in regards to the salvage box blind boxes like?
I don't begrudge anybody who enjoys those. It's just I personally have kind of a grudge against that kind of gaming mechanic where it's not so much the item but the experience of opening the box.
Yeah.
It's just not something that's ever been appealing to me. So I don't have anything against companies that do it. Obviously, it's a interesting marketing strategy. But it's not for me. It's okay.
Yeah, no,
not everything has to be for me.
Exactly, and we can all be mature adults about it and disagree without tearing lumps out of each other verbally. It's great, that's how the world works apparently. We'll go on to the comments section and see who else is tormenting us. We have Very Silent Mouse. He's saying, I was introduced to Battletech by an asshat cheater. I still play Battletech in 89. I still play Battletech. I don't speak to the asshat. Look, you're gonna get people like that no matter what game you really play. That's just sort of the gaming scene, You play people who cheat or once and then leave it at that. Have you had any experiences like that yourself, McFrog?
With cheating?
Well, yeah, we're playing assets
really. Or not so many. I haven't played very many public games in a while. There's a local group that meets at a game shop, but typically I go and just hang out.
So, like when you're playing BattleTech yourself, then is it predominantly you're playing with friends and family, or like who you're playing
until
against?
Just a couple of years ago when I moved away from the kind of friends group. My sons have both kind of been getting into the game. My younger son's just 8 now, and he's really getting into it. So we play a variation of the Alpha Strike rules with a few of the kind of standard BattleTech rules mixed in, and he's really enjoying it. So I'm kind of getting him ready for the full BattleTech experience down the road.
You're weaning them into it. Bonus dad points. You're doing well there, man. You're doing well.
Oh yeah, you got to keep it going. Got to get that next generation going.
Yeah. Next gen.
Have more mech jockeys.
Exactly. Somebody else has to carry the torch when we're all gone.
Right. So just let inherit all these mechs.
Yeah, at least they'll be glad of their inheritance in that regard. It's like all of the mechs that'll be left over for them. It's kind of like when my grandfather passed away, he had an enormous collection of cars. So everyone got a car. So it'll be like, all your kids, great grandkids, and whatever else. It's like there's a mech for you, there's one for you. Pass on the torch.
Yeah, we've had that discussion where I've got all the Warhammer 40K stuff, and I'm like, all right, each of the kids gets their Space Marine army that they've had that I made for them, and then you can keep this if you want. Then everything else can go to the you can sell it online or bring it down to the local shop and give it away to the first 12-year-old who walks in who looks like he could use a new army.
Yeah, man.
The next day, all the BattleTech stuff's got to stay in the family. All this stuff back here.
And like miniature wise, how was your collection pretty substantial before all the new stuff came out, or has it exploded somewhat? Or you're dabbling with some 3D prints as well, I saw in some of your videos, yeah.
Yeah, I had probably leaving the 90s. I probably had about 75 mechs in various states of repair and disrepair, painted 5 or 6 times with gosh knows how many layers of paint. And then since the first Kickstarter, I've been buying boxes, and then the 3D printer allowed for creating all sorts of extra mechs to paint. So I close to probably between 400 and 500 now mechs sitting around, and
Very.
it's getting to be a space consumer.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I would see my problem was I went a bit crazy on the Kickstarter. I think I had 12 mechs before the Kickstarter started, and then I was like, I want two of everything, and then yeah, it's all been downhill from there. But speaking on like 3D prints and like RAL parties and new plastics, I like how the game has in-law reasons to why the mechs would look slightly different, but at the same time, you know what they are. So I like for Battletech where it's like someone with their RAL part, a hunchback, and then a 3D printed one, and then the new plastic can all be on the same table and all be used. And it's like, yeah, there's legitimate reasons in game why they look slightly different, and and there's not discouragement or people looking down on stuff. I think that's cool as well. Like that's a good aspect. It's the addition. It's not so much one subtracting from the other, but it all adds to the game. Like I prefer the look of some of the MechWarrior 5 mechs or the MechWarrior Online mechs to the new sculpts. The Hunchback being a prime example, or the Centurion. One of the guys printed off like the 3D print one, and I really prefer the look of it compared to the new plastic one. But it's all down to personal taste. But it's nice that that's there, like that's in the community. That's part of the hobby,
Yeah, it's part of what really enriches the BattleTech lore, and you're looking back, especially like 3025, if you're focusing and playing there. These mechs have a personality to them, and it's all tied into the fact that it's produced in this certain location, and they only have access to medium lasers or this brand of PPC. So it's really easy to fall down that rabbit hole and say, "Oh yeah, the Martel medium laser, love that." And you can see it in other mechs, like, there must be some sort of connection, or they're built near the same place. So it's just really easy to get into the lore, especially if you can get access to those technical readouts from 3025 and so forth. So you see the brand of medium laser, or the brand of PPC. Just really cool, and that's part of the reason why everybody loves those mechs so much. Besides the fact they look cool, and the scene, and some of the unseen ones too, just they have a personality.
The whole unseen, reseen thing, I suppose there is that aspect of the hobby as well, or part of the history of the game, in regards to mechs being available and then being unavailable due to various legal litigation going on in the background and licensing disagreements, which I suppose is interesting in and of itself. Thankfully, it's all been resolved at this stage, hence we get some really sweet looking Warhammers and whatnot. It's
it was an interesting thing that I think that even as FASA was dying and kind of shifting over to WizKids, and they came up with this idea for the Dark Age, they wanted to get back to that thing where a mech was considered a rare and special thing to see. And it had gotten to the point with the clan invasion and the houses, Comstar showing up with this massive army of Comguard, just there were mechs everywhere.
Yeah.
And going back, I think Michael Stackpole wrote a letter to the community, and I wish I had saved a copy of it. I've asked him on Twitter if he had a copy of it, and he said he lost it over the past 20 years. But he made a pretty good argument, I think, where I have some sympathy for it, even if we disagree with how the Dark Age was done lore-wise. He makes a really good point about how mechs need to be special. And it can't just be these huge regiments. It's 4,000 mechs in a battle versus another 4,000, and they slug it out. And so I think part of that was the motivation for the Dark Age, where you have, this mech that we haven't seen a battle mech on this planet in years, and that's an amazing thing. So it's in that respect, I have some sympathy with those who were like really going forward with the Dark Age stuff.
I suppose that's kind of a problem with any franchise, though. Like, look at Alien, or the Alien franchise, where when the franchise starts out, it tends to be like one alien is like the big bad and can, butcher all in its way. And as like a franchise progresses, there's always the next big bad, and there's always more of them, so that the original monster or mech or whatever it is, that the power always tends to be diluted. There's always that sort of trend going on. There's always the next sort of big hit. It's like, well, what can we do that's better than one alien? It's like, oh, there's a queen now, and now there's loads of aliens. You know what I mean? And it's sort of, yeah, I get what you're saying. It was before my time, like the original BattleTech, but it really, from what I understand, the vibe I get from it is kind of like Knights in Space. Like
Mhm.
you've inherited your mech. They're these heirlooms that have been passed down through the generations, and it's been patched and reworked, and it's, it's like a sword or something of that manner that's been handed down generation upon generation, and they're very unique. Whereas as the game sort of progressed and things got bigger, that it did sort of, it diminishes each individual mech because the conflicts become bigger themselves, and it's understandable. It is understandable to try and want to get back to it, but I'd find it's probably like a bit of a Pandora's box of an effect. It's like once it's kind of open, it's like you know, there isn't really much going back. I don't think with for some folk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's easy to sympathize with the reasons why they did it. How they did it, of course, is an entirely different issue. Tell
We
you
want
what,
to get
we're
back
to
to
play and
this.
how their reason for getting rid of all of these units is space magic. We just have jump ships that can jump farther than everybody else's, and we've got armies that came out of nowhere. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. But that's actually a really good comparison with the Alien movies, because if you watch the Alien movies, no, the first movie and the second movie are completely different films.
Yeah,
They're practically different genres, where the bad guy in the first movie is the people themselves are really the bad guy. They're dealing with this challenge of the alien on the ship, but it's the people and their decisions and the synthetic human. They're all making these decisions that are hobbling each other. That's very much like early BattleTech, where it's focused on like people making these decisions. Battle mechs are there and they're a tool for accomplishing the things you wanted to accomplish. But really, it's about people. And I hear this all the time with my writing, and when I've listened to other BattleTech authors talk about their writing, in that the interesting stuff is the stuff that happens outside the battle mech. Yes, the battles are great; they're fun. It's always fun to watch, um, to read about mechs blowing each other apart. But it's also about the people that are piloting those mechs, and so it's important to have that good balance. But as far as the second movie goes, that's very much like the clan invasion era, where you have lots of big armies and you have this grand enemy that you're facing. No matter which side of the battle you're on, being a Jade Falcon, I have a slightly different perspective on things than the your average Inner Sphere person, but that's very much like the Aliens, where you have this wall, basically walls of armies going up against each other, grand battles. Uh, Two Kids, great to read about, all those cool stories, but very different um, than that 3025 era where mechs are special.
and yeah, and it sort of goes from scarier scale and bigger again. How did you find? I mean, I'm interested. Like how did you find in the earlier eras or in the early game vehicles being part of the game? Because I know a lot of folk tend not to. It's all about the mix for them. Myself, I'd have more of a view of, I look at BattleTech as sort of a combined arms game, that it's
Mhm.
capable of having troops and vehicles and VTOLs and wanting to use them in game. And there has been issue with some folk trying to integrate where they find it a bit clunky or a bit jarring. Like, how did you find it early on, and how do you find it now, kind of?
Well, I think the rules can be a little tricky with the vehicles, and they could probably benefit from some streamlining. I think I mentioned that in a vehicle video I did. But it kind of depends on how particular you want to get. Again, with BattleTech, you're kind of choosing which rules you want to play with and not. But for infantry, I think they go into the game really well. I use elementals a lot in when I'm going after when I'm going after my son. He hates those elementals because they're just jumping all over the place. They're hard to kill. But I think the infantry and the battle armor go in really well, and We're going to experience as more people try the tanks with the new Kickstarter. I
Mm.
think more people are going to warm to that and see combined arms as a fun way to mix things up.
I think you're right. I think the inclusion of plastic vehicles will see an explosion of combined arms across the community, and it'll be interesting to see what direction it goes in. Then, if they do go for this sort of streamlining, I think there was something that came out in regards to vehicles that they kind of streamlined something a little bit. For Alpha Strike, I think it is. They've come they've tried they in one of the downloads. Do you know the preview downloads that we have for the Kickstarter? I think there were some cards included in that for something like what you're saying, where the rules for vehicles are streamlined and they're sort of represented by counters or cards. I
Mhm.
don't remember the details of it off the top of my head as I haven't tried it yet. But I think they're doing something like that to sort of try and integrate vehicles a bit more into the games and get some use out of them.
Yeah, and it's similar to mechs where if you just go with kind of the base rules and don't worry about the nitty gritty, like, oh, you were on a concrete hex and now you have to roll to see if you slid and you find out how far you slid and just you can make it as complex as you want. I'm sure there are people out there who want it as complex as possible, but that's part of the kind of beauty of Battletech is you can play it very simple as long as your opponent is agreeing.
Oh yeah, like you can go down that rabbit hole as far as you want, but it really is a case of, do we want to try and get this game finished in one night? It's like we can include the fire rules, and set stuff on fire, but are we going to bother tracking everything? All the smoke, the flame spreading, you know what I mean? It adds to the game, but it also adds a lot of paperwork. So it's fun though. I like that about Battletech. It's like, here's the rules. If you're really crazy enough to pull all this off, it's all there, but you may not want to.
It's nighttime and low G and the atmosphere is
It's
this, that, or
acid
the other.
rain and the whole shebang, like. And have a look at the chat and see what people are chatting about. Hobbygit was saying the very first thing that caught my eyes was a Battletech anniversary box from about 10 years ago. Wasn't a fan of the mech minis, but I always loved the idea of the game and the setting. Was aware it existed before then, but it's really hard to get Battletech stuff in the UK. I found that myself in Ireland personally. It was hard to get a hold of stuff, but that's changed now. Thankfully, that's changed quite a lot. It's a lot easier to get a hold of stuff in the UK, Ireland, and Europe in general. Lorcan was saying, yeah, that generation of starter box minis was not good. The ones from the following box were better, but still not as good as the new ones. I think you're right there, Lorcan. Hobbygate was saying the value was great, but there was loads of minis that still had left the house of a friend and fell out and never got back into it. Eric is saying, what a killer duo. Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you for the compliments. If Frog starts something, we'll be here a while, says Scorpia.
Of a painting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, take your time. You're talking to me. You're in good company if it takes an age for you to paint stuff. I have a glacial pace when it comes to painting things, so you wouldn't be the only one.
I think it boils down to whether or not I'm being commissioned to paint something or I'm just doing it for fun or for a video.
Ah, so you do commissions as well. How do you find the motivation to do a commission? Like, do you then take commissions that you feel you would enjoy painting, or do you just take commissions and then persevere through it? Just about commission painting, like.
Uh, so far, I've really enjoyed the commissions that I've taken. Most of the time, it's just people I know from Twitter. Like, oh, I didn't realize you did a commission. Will you paint me up a lance or a star of this? I'm like, sure. And so it's been a very rewarding thing to do. It's not like a money maker. It's not paying the bills or anything, but it's it's a fun way to kind of connect with the community. And again, it's all about building connections.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose then if folk have one of your miniatures, then yeah, it's like it ties into it a bit more. I suppose, like with the community and in, interacting with each other, and yeah, it's nice when you have something painted by one of your friends or someone you follow, because it represents them. It's a physical sort of representation of them within your collection. It's always sort of nice when that happens. Uh,
Yeah, I'm really enjoying being just a booster for BattleTech. So things that help the community, like I've got 3D files that I put up I have the kind of custom hex base that I 3D print. I put the files up on my mini factory just for free. And so every once in a while, I'll be wandering around on Battletech Reddit or some other place, and I'll see, oh, he's got the hex bases. He must have printed them off. So it's very rewarding to see, oh, there's a little tiny piece of something that I did
Out in
that's
the
making
wild.
somebody else's Battletech experience better. And so that's very rewarding.
Yeah, that's cool. I've noticed your bases. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That must be cool, man. I'd say so. Yeah, yeah. Your little bit of hobby is being spread out there, and it's out in the wilderness. We have some more
Just off,
chat here.
literally printed Souls hex bases from you. There you go. Yeah, I can't remember how many. Let's see, I can pull it up real quick. Let's see how many times they've been
He's saying
downloaded.
they're lethal. Apparently, this is from Eric.
900, 956 downloads. That's quite a few.
Well, yeah, that's
That's
pretty good, man.
pretty good.
We'll see. We're see quite a lot of the chat is skipping past pretty quickly. I hope it to be available on the Kickstarter, says Lorcan. The only neoprene mat I don't have is the BFM Yeti. Oh, the big one. I got the big. Is that the big one? Change the name of it. I love the old 2025 scenario packs where the mechs and the maintenance issues and pre-existing damage. I tried some of them with a friend actually. They're kind of interesting. The old scenarios, going through one or two of them.
It's fun to go through those old books because a lot of it's just kind of this campy, fun 1980s sci-fi. It's this little time capsule for what nerds were thinking about in 1986. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and the force composition, and you're looking at it, and it's like there's lambs in some of them as well, like if they're really old school.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's fun. It is that sort of like I like that about BattleTech, the way it's sort of like a retro future. If you get me, it's like the 1980s idea of the future and how it's
Absolutely.
yeah how reality has skewed from their predictions, but it's still fun. It's absolutely fun.
It's kind of both a more innocent view of what people thought the future would be, and also that very dark view that we haven't learned to stop killing each other in the next 1,000 years. But kind of this creation that came up before the internet and drones and all that stuff. And I know BattleTech's slowly kind of incorporating those new technologies with drones and stuff. But it is a really cool time capsule. Being a history guy, I love all that.
It is kind of fun to see how like technology we has diverged away from the concept, but also to see how like our current day technology is getting more and more capable of making mechs, but that the whole concept of a mech, it's like, would it actually be useful on the battlefield? And it's like, well, does it really matter? You know what I mean? Big stompy robots,
When
plenty
I
of
think at
stacking.
certain times in the past 20 years, we would have had different answers to those questions.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, would something this big walking tank, would it survive for very long in the battlefield? You might have a different answer in 1998 versus 2008 versus today, based upon what we've seen with the change in um, battlefield tactics
Yeah,
with
the
real
various
world.
conflicts. How would each have fared in various conflicts? But then, of course, it being sci-fi, it's like anything can happen, really. You know what I mean? And I like
Yeah,
that. It's like you really want absolutely anything to happen in BattleTech. It's like go out into the periphery, man. Anything goes.
love the periphery. You can do anything you want out there.
Yeah, it's like
Sky's the limit.
I see. I love that idea of the periphery, where it's like regardless of the timeline and how the tech has advanced, you could do like a campaign where it's just these folk headed off after like the Forced Succession War and their technology base has degraded massively, and you could have mechs that have like primitive technology. So if somebody comes along with like a Succession Wars era mech, it would be godlike. You know what I mean? Kind
Mhm.
of you can have fun with it. I don't know. Maybe that's sort of the idea I'd have would be like to regress the tech all the way back, and then you could sort of like uh, push it up over time, and having the restricted resources. Like if a jump ship came and then the drive was screwed, so they've only got so much. You know, you do
Yeah,
some.
it's an interesting part of the BattleTech IP in that if you want something very structured and you want to follow all the political stuff, you can hang out in the middle of the inner sphere. If you want to be a little bit more wild and tell a story that's a little bit off the standard thing, you can go out and play in the periphery. And it's a strength that I keep going back to 40K, but Warhammer 40K is very open in that respect. You could say, oh yeah, this planet exists and the story is taking place on the planet because it just hasn't been discovered yet. And so it's a very open environment for telling stories, and that's a really great thing. And so I hope Battletech keeps that periphery kind of mysterious, and we kind of resist the temptation to plan out every single planet and give every single planet a detailed backstory
Mm.
that you can't deviate from, because then you just run out of stories to
Yeah,
tell.
you've written yourself into a corner at that stage if stuff gets locked in. But even
You don't
then,
want
there
to.
could always be some form of expansion, regardless. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like in some respects, I like that we're getting like on the wall of the hinterlands toward June 3152. I've got that map on the wall from the source books, and I like that it gives you all the details for the planets. It gives you the jump distance between them and how long it'll take, so that you can play your campaign and you can fight in the hinterlands, and everything's named. I like that that's like rigid and structured, but then you still have the sandbox that is the periphery, like going off the unbeaten track, as you're saying. So it really has the best of both worlds in regards to like setting up a campaign, or writing lore, or even like some of the eras previously, like things being fleshed out a bit more. I like that about Shrapnel. Not that I've read much of it, but it's not just the new stuff or the old stuff. It's like there's bits from different eras being put in. So like the storyline, you know, lore wise, you can be coming at it from any angle really.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That having all of those options, that's the really great thing. If you want to tell a story that's deep in the politics of House Steiner or Purple Bird, the barracks, you can do that, or you can go off and play on your own and do something really wacky. But part of the reason why I made the very deliberate choice with my recent fiction series is I want to do something that's not stepping on anyone's toes and just do something that's completely wild and add a little flavors of classic Battletech in there, because the people are in this story are going to see all sorts of interesting things. They've already run into an alien species that lots of people didn't even know was in Battletech. Um,
Oh, the dudes like rocks, was it? Those
I can't remember the name of it, but it sticks to the back of your
Yeah, yeah,
neck and
yeah.
they
It was, yeah. I watched that episode where it's like it looks like a rock, so it's like, okay, don't go near the rocks. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
I thought that was funny. Yeah, yeah. It'll be
So it's been
interesting.
fun going through the older source books and finding kind of cute, weird things from the periphery whenever it mentions it, and go, all right, I'm going to incorporate this into the story and get it get it updated in the Ill Clan era, but use all this cool stuff and kind of tweak things as we go and have a little adventure.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, I've been watching it and I've been enjoying it, man. It's good stuff. I like it. I like your setup that you have for it as well. The sort of where it's a little computer and there's a desk and there's all detail. Like the visuals for it is really good too. I enjoy that. You're doing a
And
great job, man.
trying to create like a little bit of a multimedia experience, so it's not just listening to my voice. So to give you something to look at and think about and go, oh, what does this thing mean? Will it have some relevance in the story and all that? So
Yeah, it's going well, man. You're doing a cracking job. Go to the comment section and who is talking? There's so much. It's flying past. Eric was saying, do you think classic BattleTech rules will ever get an update overhaul, or classic will always gonna be beautiful and janky?
I think they'll leave the classic rules alone. I think the Alpha Strike is basically their attempt to streamline play.
Hmm.
And so it and it's possible, like I mentioned, I play with my son, we kind of adding a few things here and there to the Alpha Strike rules. So I don't think they'll change the classic ones, and you don't have to break what fix what isn't broken.
Yeah, I think that's like a strong point for me regarding the classic rules is that veteran players can come back to the game and they can recognize the gaming system and can get back into it quick enough. Like there have been changes over time, but for me, it looks like they're refinements. Where there hasn't been broad sweeping changes and the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater like with other games.
Yeah.
But it's cool that there's also Alpha Strike. So there's Classic and Alpha Strike. It's not either or. Like there's them and there's the Battle Force as well. And then you've got your A Time of War and Destiny, and that you can integrate going all the way up to like planet invasions all the way down to individual mech warriors. That's catered for. If that's what you want to do with it, like as we said before, the rules giving you the options to do all these things. You know what I mean? And it's just up to you and your gaming group. How detailed do you want things to be? Campaign wise, do you want to just use war chest points, or do you just want to go? One of you needs to be an accountant because we're counting every damn sea bell in this game.
Always got to watch those repair bills. They'll get you every time.
Ammo, man, ammo, and it's funny, ammo and repairs, and then like how much can we actually carry on this Union dropship? You know what I mean? It's
I just think it's amazing that you could pick up the game after 20 years and play it. You
yeah,
don't have to sit there and go, okay, well, what did they change from last year?
oh
If
yeah,
I wanted to take AdMech down to the game shop and play a game of 40K with Adeptus Mechanicus, I have to buy the 9th edition source book and sit down for several hours to figure out what changed and what I need to do to
and
probably buy new models again, because the models you have are no longer the in models anymore.
or they've been
So
phased out, or the wrong base, or the wrong size, or whatever sort of mechanic is used to force you to buy more without. Which I think is a pity because it's not needed. If you have a love for a game and the miniatures are able to stand by themselves as good looking miniatures, you know what I mean? You'll want to buy into it more. I find with Battletech, I don't need any encouragement to buy more miniatures. You know what I mean? It's like there's a new box set coming out. Ooh, what's in it? What's looking good? You know what I mean? Oh, they've
treat
done
it
the
like
different.
catch them all.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta have every
exactly. It is a bit like that. It is, updating your Pokédex there with the latest batch of mechs. It's yeah, it doesn't need to be any sort of gimmicky mechanics or
chasing meta where you have to, oh well, this battle master is not good anymore, so I have to buy the next thing. No, your battle master is always going to be a battle master, and you people use mechs that are quote unquote not optimal,
hmm.
but that's part of the fun of the game. You're playing a mech that's fun, not necessarily the mech that's the min-maxed best mech for the job.
Well, I suppose this is the thing with like people designing their own mechs. There is a proclivity with some players who want the min max sort of miniature. They want the optimum one, which is understandable. But I like the BattleTech, like the lore approach, where it's like, listen, we have this mech. What weapons do we have? Because we need to get them out now. We've a load of AC2s. All right, grand. Throw them on it. Regardless of it being optimal or not. It's like, this is what we have. This is what works. Get it out there and get it shooting. You know what I mean? And it'll be totally suboptimal, but it's a mech with a weapon, and that's what they had at the time, and that's what got sent out. Like I like that about the game as well. Like that the lore gives these reasons for why things are suboptimal, and why the hell did they put the ammo here and the gun there, and why is there so much ammunition on this mech when a PPC would be better? It's because we couldn't afford PPCs at the time, buddy. You know what I mean? This is as good as it got.
You work with what you have.
Exactly, and that's part of it. Like that's the beauty. Lorca was saying there's going to be stripped down rules for vehicles in regular BattleTech, an expansion of the ones from Tukiad campaign book. Standard one. Locust Labs are saying VTOL is king.
Well, she can model one. I'll print it.
Yeah.
Go.
Get
She's done some really great 3D modeling of mech proxies.
nice.
Doing some stuff.
I dabbled a while ago in making some terrain for BattleTech, but I really haven't gone back to it in a long time, or got the printer up and running. But I do like that there's quite a lot going on as well, 3D print wise, like terrain or vehicles or even alternate sort of proxy mechs. There's a lot of bits and pieces going around. Or like yourself with the bases, like, oh, we'll have a look. Is this some of the terrain? Oh, that looks good.
So based on the hex base um, bases for the mechs, and then just scaled up and tweaked out for actual bits of terrain. So I've got probably 20 of these or so I can move them around the battlefield, and they're all set to certain heights, the 1, 2, and 3, and 4.
Yeah,
So
your various levels for the game. I think that'll be like a goal eventually is to get the finger out and get sort of the standard neoprene mats. Because when we play in the club, we tend to play on the neoprene mats. So if a lot of them, I bring them along, we play them. They fit nicely on the tables. But especially for new players, I think that sort of 3D terrain, giving a visual representation and the differentiation between level ones, twos, threes, it can make a big difference. Like some of the guys used Hero Clicks, I believe it was, or Hero Scape or something like that. There was an old, I think it was an MB game, but there was a game that was out that had hexes that are slightly bigger, and people bought them by the truckload when they were, going out of production or whatever, and it makes a good 3D board. Some of the guys, they're able to make like 6x4 boards or bigger again, like 6x8 or 6x12 boards worth of this stuff. And the 3D terrain really, it looks better, and it helps a lot visually. So I can understand wanting to go down that path, but it's just a case of getting it done.
yeah,
Yourself. It's a
yeah,
get
time and the the motivation.
the will is there. You know what I mean? The will is there. It is just like the time dedicating it and getting it done. It's like, I could make terrain, or I could try and finish getting my Lance of Mechs finished up, or other
Yeah,
forces I'm supposed to be doing.
number of projects you're working on at any one given point. Like, hey, I'd love to do this thing, but there's only 24 hours a day, and you know,
There's only so much hobby time. Yep.
lots and lots of half-done projects. Scary number of half-done projects.
Ah, stop, man. There's half-baked projects everywhere around this house. Eric was
Star,
asking. Sorry.
Star of Jade Falcons that still need to be done. I've got a
Absolutely.
dragon that needs to be finished. Just piles of mechs everywhere.
Stacks of them. I noticed you take the mechs off the bases, and I see the logic behind it, because I like doing a bit of sponge weathering in regards to, like, especially around the feet sections. I'll show a close cam there, especially around the sort of feet sections of mechs, because I try and think, if it when it comes to weathering a mech, like what parts of the mech are going to be weathered the most. It's going to be like around the feet if it knocks rocks and stuff like that, and around the lower legs, and then maybe around the arms and stuff, and the odd scuff on the chest. But I find that if it's left on the base, it can be a bit difficult to try and get the angles in there and get the weathering
Mm-hmm.
done. So I can understand the logic behind taking them off of the bases so that you can get a better angle on the painting. Originally I was like, that seems a bit, excessive. But as I've dabbled with a few of them, it's like I can see the wisdom behind it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's whatever works for you, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
I just as I'm putting them on my custom bases anyway, it just makes sense for me to pull them off right away, and then they can get into all the little nooks and crannies, and it's easier to airbrush that way, and so it's all good.
yeah, and different tips and tricks. It is, yeah, it will. I suppose there's so many ways to skin a cat in regards to painting battle mechs.
I
Oh,
got
I've got
this
a bigger one.
big one that Locust Labs designed, and I printed out at I think it was 300% scale. So I'll try to get some paint on this here soon. Uh,
Did you
really
print
get
it out in resin? Was it?
of the classic Warhammer. I like it.
It is.
Think it'll probably end up race car red. Get some cherry gloss on there.
Nice. You thinking Drac mech or custom paint job, or?
Might be a custom, might be a Solaris mech.
Ooh.
See what happens. I don't have a plan. There's never a plan.
You just sort of go with the flow. What is it? Like,
Sometimes you accidentally discover, oh, that actually looks really cool. Let's do that.
And yeah, let's go with it. Like when you're painting up your mix, do you paint up units specifically? Like if you have a scenario, or even the old scenario books like that you're wanting to paint, do you try and aim for like specific unit paint jobs, or is it just a case of seeing what works and what doesn't work as you're going through it? Like,
Only very rarely have I tried to mimic like a pre-existing scheme. I
hmm
like to do my own thing, came up with my own Jade Falcon scheme just because, yeah, I like to do new stuff. I don't want to do what everybody else is doing.
yeah, you want to do your own thing. I can understand. Yeah, totally get
There
it.
have been cases where people have asked, "Oh, I want Grayson Carwell's Marauder." Okay, well, I'll bust out the book and make it as close as we can.
And is it like that for commissions? Like people will be asking you specifically for a specific paint job, like Grayson Carl,
Yeah,
or
I've had a few that are super specific, like I want these exact three colors for the camo. And we actually have a long conversation about, okay, well, if we use this one, it's going to be a little bit darker when it's done. So, oh, no, we need to change to this color. And then the one I'm working on right now is just paint me an atlas. And that was my only instruction. Just make it awesome. So,
save you a bit more free reign in
right.
that regard.
Yeah. So we'll do something wacky with this atlas, I think.
I like what you did with the hunchback that you put up in the shorts, where it's like the head and the alternate sort of weapon loadout. I thought that was.
Yeah, it arrived in the box, missing the head and the weapon and the AC-20. So
Oh,
I
okay.
have, whenever I 3D print like parts, I always print extras.
Mm-hmm.
So I have all these little leftover parts that I can drop on mechs and do like emergency kit bashing. So, kind of worked out.
Yeah. No, it looks
I have
it's
to figure out a build with an LRM5 and an SRM6 on it, but
well, yeah. More
a little
excuse
bit
to
of a
sort of
weird
make a
one.
custom one. Yeah. Do your own sort of thing, or like I like that the game comes with the miniatures sort of pre-built and pre-assembled. So it's pick up the box, everything's included. You can start playing straight away. I like that about it, but I also like that's it's not things aren't locked into to stay that way. So it's a case of, hey, we're gonna make a free pirate force, so get your jeweler saw out or your blade and get chopping and changing. And what you're doing there is ideal for it. It's nice that some of the newer scopes that they're doing with Iron Man metals, you'll get extra arms or alternate arms, but like having a bag of like 3D printed bits, like what you've got there yourself is brilliant. Like you can just go crazy at that stage. Or doing Franken mechs as well, getting we had to even through like I love that. It's like if you're playing a campaign and you're going through, right, and you've got your Wolverine and then you've knocked something. You've knocked a Wolverine. Oh, there you look, the secret stash.
The weapons. Yeah.
Like
But it's nice to have that option where you could theoretically chop arms off and mix things up.
exactly, or even just give a different paint job. It's like, hey, we stole the leg off of this mech, but we haven't had the time to repaint it yet, or whatever. So you could paint it red if you're fighting another specific faction, or start getting some weird janky sort of mismatched arms, or the lasers are different ones because you've had to chop and change. I like
Hmm.
that idea. I'd like to do that in the future. I'd like to get a campaign going where it's that sort of thing where you're pirates and you're just sort of hoping for the best. This.
Things are held on with chicken wire and duct tape. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you go to raid a depot thinking it's going to be full of ammunition, and it's full of medium lasers or whatever. There's a whole trove of them, and you're like, it's not what we're looking for, but we'll roll with it.
I was reading the newest Brian Young book, the Fox Tales, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Talks about this young mercenary commander, and I really like that they're in a world where things are not always easy to obtain, and so fighting a mech and discovering, oh, it hasn't fired its AC-20, and maybe it doesn't have any ammo, and that completely changes
The
the
dynamic.
battle.
Yeah.
This mech no longer has its biggest, most powerful weapon, and now things are a little bit less uh, cut and dry about who's going to win a fight. So he did a good job with that.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting mechanic because it does sort of mix things up a bit where people who are reading know the mechs and they know, oh, this guy hasn't got a chance. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, if you're finding out that the AC-20 isn't functional, it's like it will tip the balance altogether.
Hmm.
That's a it's a pretty good way. I like that. I like that idea. It's not a
And
it's
I've got a list of temporary quirks and drawbacks that that I shared with a Discord group. But you can roll before a campaign or during a campaign where you can find out, oh, does your mech have a positive quirk? You could be like, your your long range weapons go one. Your long range is now one hex further,
hmm.
and so it's really kind of small things, but who knows how they could affect a battle. But just to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, give things a bit more flavor without it being like this uber game breaking. Yeah, rule set. I like that about the pilots. Like, do you bother with the pilot cards and the pilot
I
abilities?
Again, that my little one's not old enough yet to kind of deal with that yet, but I think he'll probably end up wanting to create his own character here soon.
Yeah, of course. Like, you make your own character. What abilities would they have? And go with it. We have some comments in the comments section. We have Locust Lab saying "My anniversary, baby!"
Oh,
Exclamation
the
mark.
Warhammer. Yeah,
Lorcan is saying that Warhammer has vibes of the 80s Macross and Robotech toys. I approve while having a modern Macross toy of it in my eyeline. Hmm.
I really like the 3D modelers out there who kind of mesh the old and the new together. So
Hmm.
it's not just like somebody pulls the MechWarrior Online files and prints them, but someone actually showing some creativity and saying, "All right, I like this element from the 1980s version of the Warhammer, and I like this from the new one. Let's come up with something that's like an in between. You're filling out this evolutionary chart, perhaps,
Yeah, yeah.
between the two.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
soon as you said that, that's what I was thinking myself. It's like you can have it as sort of a progression Warhammer, fill in the gap in the eras as we were talking about different factories producing different mechs or the same factory developing the same mech, and this is the development of it. Like I like that about BattleTech as well. It's kind of like it's a weird mix in that it's a sci-fi game, but it's kind of like a historical game at the same time, where it's got those different eras and different variants come out, and that your older mechs that you bought in your Game of Armored Combat or your beginner box set, you'll still be able to use them in later eras because more variants will be coming out as well. So it's, I like that it's not a case of, oh well, these only play in this era and these only play in that era, and obviously like later tech only kicks in later on, but it's the fact that you can still use your Succession War stuff still gets fielded on the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was noticing with the little TROs that they've been releasing on PDF, they've taken those older mechs and are kind of updating them for the Ill Clan era. And I was noticing that the Grizzly replaced its main gun with a plasma rifle. So that's going to be interesting because here we have a clan mech, but it's an inner sphere weapon because you have the Ghost Bear Dominion now.
Mm.
And so it's going to be interesting to see how things go where you have clan based mechs with inner sphere stuff on them and inner sphere stuff with clan weapons and all sorts of opportunities for some really cool updates for older designs.
Yeah, some
Again,
serious mixing
it's
and
a
matching.
very big strength of the game is that your model is never useless. It's
Yeah,
never out to the point where you'll never use it again. There's always going to be somebody out there who wants to use the Battlemaster model or the Warhammer or the Marauder or whatever,
yeah,
and they're going to.
there's definitely a use for there's definitely a use for all the mix. It's like they may not be the optimal for them, like Cyclops. You don't really see many of them on the field, but like depending on what rules you're using, like if you want to use alternate rules for command mechs, you might get better use out of it. Or if you're not just fighting against other optimized, if your op four isn't optimized and you're not optimized, then it's it's fine. If people aren't min maxing going for zombie mix, with the can't get ammo explosions and all this type of stuff. Have you had problems with that yourself playing against people who've like? Have you played against many custom mechs or?
Not really. The most I've played have all been kind of stock. It
Hmm.
seems like that's kind of the prevailing opinion around here is people just want to play stock because they don't want to deal with, oh, this is my min-maxed mech with 4 ERPPCs and 40 double heat sinks or whatever they can cram on there to keep the machine from blowing up.
That seems to be my perception of like custom mechs. I haven't played against them, but there does seem to be this sort of worrying niggle in the back of my mind and probably others as well, where it's the last thing you want to do is come up against someone who's made a custom mech, and it's literally that. It's just like super optimized, and it's got no obvious weaknesses, and it's maxed out its armor, and this has been balanced perfectly, and damage output has been with heat sinks, and I'm sure the BV on it will be crazy, but I'd like to see some custom stuff as well, like some interesting sort of tidbits. Like I'd be interested in something along the lines of, like, the way we have the giant sort of dump trucks that go to mines, the
Hmm.
big massive ones. I've always thought like it would be interesting to have a vehicle like that has a winch at the top of the bucket, and they'd use it to recover mechs. Because I was thinking to myself, like, how could a periphery sort of state recover mechs if they don't have specialized gear? Like, what what gear could you commandeer to sort of get battlefield salvage off of the table if there isn't any specialist recovery vehicles? So maybe
Hmm.
if there was like a conversion package, like a company produced vehicles, and then they're like, oh well, there's this conversion package, you can get even more use out of our vehicle. You know what I mean? That sort of thing, when the mining shift is over and the battles happen near, or they just steal them. I like that idea in regards to like custom vehicles or custom mechs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the reason why I stopped playing MechWarrior Online so many years ago. Just having mechs that are just min-maxed to heck and back. Somebody sits down and does the math where, oh, put 8 medium pulse lasers on this thing and just obliterate everything, and then that's the meta for a couple of weeks, and then it becomes this as they kind of chase the nerf with yeah, it's just not how I enjoy the game. It's more about the mechs, and so playing stock mechs is great. I know that you kind of have the halfway compromise they came up with a certain type of hard points, but um, you're always going to have some knucklehead who's sat down and done the calculus and realized, oh, if I put 5 of these things and chain them along with this PPC, it does this much damage per second, and yeah. Sorry, I'm not going to play MWO with you.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. I dabbled with it myself when it initially came out, and then I just sort of lost interest a bit. Like, I enjoyed when I played. I think it was before the clans got released, really, and then I got back and I dabbled with it a bit after that. But I just, yeah, I don't know what it was. I enjoyed playing a spider and just running around tormenting people. Really, cause I don't know what it was. It was just like if I played medium or heavy mechs or assault mechs, like the gameplay was just kind of boring for me. Whereas I liked running around like a headless chicken, just sort of like hitting people with medium lasers in the back to annoy them, to get them to look at me and then run off again and be like, tee. That was,
So how do I strangle someone through the internet because the spider pilots just drove me nuts?
yeah. That was the type of game I enjoyed. It'd be like if I get caught, I'll get absolutely torn in two. But that's my own fault for getting caught. But yeah, that was my entertainment out of MechWarrior Online. It was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But I do like the MechWarrior 5 games. Have you played much of them? The new MechWarrior 5s?
The AI has just so many issues with MechWarrior
Ah,
5
it
where
does. I have to agree with you there. Like, the only reason why I've enjoyed really playing it is because I'm playing with like three other mates, two or three mates, and we're running a lance, and then it's really fun. Like, the game comes into its own when you're playing with other players, but the AI is just brain dead. My God, it's
the enemy AI will focus fire you if you do any damage at all to them. So your lance is all there. Everybody's shooting everybody, but the second you do damage to something, it turns
mm,
and focuses on you until you're dead. That's not a very realistic situation where because you're getting hit by all sorts of different sources, and you're not instantly turning and targeting. And then, of course, the mission design where you have just waves of enemies
war
forever
zones.
until you either die or you complete the mission. And sometimes the mission's bugged, and so you play for 30 minutes and then you get wiped out because you can't physically beat the mission. Yeah, I didn't have to play very long before
I
I
haven't
can't
come
do this.
across that myself, thankfully, but no, I can understand there being a couple of bugs. There's a couple of things, a couple of improvement of life updates that they could have done. Like, I was baffled at the grid reference map not having any grid references on it. Like, it'll come up and it'll be the squares, but it's like there's nothing on the squares, so I can't tell you like Charlie 3. You know what I mean? It's like, what square? Oh, that one over there, sort of. You know what I mean? I found that funny. But no, for the most part, I found that if you're playing with other players, then yeah. But like, if you're depending on the AI, I've literally watched, I think it was a Thunderbolt from my lance get torn apart by a locust. Like, literally ran circles around it, killing it. And I was in a Marauder at a time that had lost spot of its arms, and the autocannon had ran out of ammo. So I'm literally standing here. At the time, you couldn't switch mechs. Look, like, I can't do anything about this, and I'm watching this locust slowly tear apart the thunderbolt from my lance, and I'm like, the AI in this game, man. Oh my god, yeah.
Hopefully they did mention that some changes in the AI for the next DLC, so we'll see. I'll give it a try.
Ah,
Keep
yeah.
an open mind.
Play. See if you can get other players. I'm telling you, it's a world of a difference. Especially like the tactics you can employ. Like, if you're doing a demolition mission, and you all
Mm.
decide to run in with like really underweight but really fast mechs that do a lot of damage. So like fire starters or Jenners even, or you know what I mean.
Mm.
And you just run in, destroy the building, and run out again. And it's like, if we stick around too long, we'll be absolutely annihilated. But it's very sort of like, if
That's a much more realistic situation than fighting against waves of enemies. Like, what
exactly.
commander would send in for 2 mechs and a couple of tanks at a time? Yes, we'll destroy them slowly as we wipe out our own forces.
Yeah. It's like, but you can't pull that off if you're doing it with AI. It's like, you can sort of get away with it if you just run yourself with a mech specifically to destroy stuff. You can get away with it for a bit up to a certain level, but after that, it's like the amount of enemies that come in, you end up being mauled. But yeah, with friends, definitely the game is way better with friends. I think that's the point on that one. I think we have a few more comments in the comment section if we want to check them out. There is a shed load of people here. Six boys showed up. What's the crack? Madcat352 is here. There has been a lot of comments since we last checked them. Who have we got here? Madcat352 was saying, I want to paint my Clan Wolf mechs a red wolf grey. Don't like the colours used by Clan Wolf. Yeah, that's totally doable. Hobbygit was saying, I think I'll paint my Atlas in Steiner colours. Not sure, but I thought I might just have a few mechs in each of the inner sphere houses, and then my favourites in my Merc, in quotes, Crow colours. Locust Labs is saying, I don't know why they don't just design the models with 10 leg poses and all of the weapons options. We have.
Maybe as Battletech grows, and hopefully it'll be a really good year this year, that we'll start seeing some more detail and quality in the models and more variations as more people play.
Well, yeah, alternate. They're doing alternate poses on stuff and jump jets and jump jet plumes, which will be interesting to see as well.
Mm-hmm.
Lorcan is saying foxtails are a lot of fun. As Jeff was asking, any recommended mechs to 3D print? He's saying, how's it going? Any recommendations about mechs to 3D print if people can get their hands on them?
They're looking for STLs. Probably My Mini Factory is probably a good place to search for battle mech.
And any specific mechs you think should be, like, if someone was printing their first lance, what mechs would you suggest to them, like, print wise?
Like it. It depends on inner sphere or clan and what you're hoping to get out of your lance, right?
I suppose, yeah. There's a lot of variation out there. I'd probably tell someone to print off like a Warhammer and Marauder. They can do like paired matches. They can do 1-on-1s. They're not too.
Along with a good the unseen.
It's a good start, and then a good good start to build a lance as well. Jiggly Anon Bloop. Do a campaign in the vein of Metabots. Winner of the battle receives a part from the loser. That would be interesting.
Your mech's left leg. Thank you very much.
Psyology and Matt Madison has a lot of free MechWarrior Online mechs for printing. Sir Mortimer has a lot of varied and good stuff. I have a few free test models myself, says Locust Labs. Fair play. Lorcan was saying there has been a few clan mechs carrying Inner Sphere weapons in the rec guide. One Stormwolf variant has a clan plasma cannon and an Inner Sphere plasma rifle. Ooh. Scorpio is saying, go on.
We'll just keep seeing more of that as time passes with mechs that are really just quasi clan / Inner Sphere, especially with the Ghost Bears.
Well, I suppose like the clans have been in the Inner Sphere space for like what 100 years now, is it? It's about 100 years. So you'd expect it. You know what I mean? You'd expect there to be a lot of cross pollination at this stage. I know early on in like the clan invasion and the lore, the Inner Sphere were scrambling to get any of the clan weapons and get them, wired into their mix. But then production was,
And you're fine. Gauss rifles and axes, and you're good to go.
Scorpio saying pure optimization is pilot skill 2 charger 1A1. Oh yes. Nothing but the finest. One of my friends, when I first started off and I was trying to build the 12 mechs, I got a couple of mechs donated to me that were plastics. I got the charger, and I was told you have to play it as the charger 1A1. It's kind of like the rite of passage. And I loved it. I thought it was hilarious, especially when like you close the distance, and as soon as you tell your opponent like it's a 1A1, and they're veteran players, they just ignore it. They don't bother with it at all until it runs up and does like 15 points of damage with small lasers and then kicks your leg off.
Get into melee range and you're good to go.
Oh, it's fun. I like that though. I like there's absolutely terrible mechs, but they're still useful in the game. You know what I mean? The meme mechs, like it's always funny when the urban mechs get brought out, and people are trying to figure out, is it the one carrying the AC-20 or not, or what's it got going? Some silly variants that they have. It's pretty crazy. Emery is saying, I'm just happy to see Unseen again, and to see Lambs, which were never popular, but seem like something to hang on to as an oddity. They were never popular, no?
Yeah, I never had one. They always seemed like a pretty low on the interest level, even back then when we were.
So they were like a super niche type of thing, the Land Air mechs?
Yeah, I think people liked the rules for trying to get the Aerotech rules to work with Battletech, and not enough people played with Aerotech anyway, so it's.
Right, I get you. So like my impression tends to be with Battletech and a lot of the player base is people are in it for the mechs, and anything that sort of deviates away from it, whether it be Aerotech stuff or even like conventional near infantry, like you tend not to see a lot of it. Now, as we said before, with the new Kickstarter, that will probably change massively in the current era. But I can understand in previous eras why it's sort of they wouldn't be seen as much. I found it with 40k is my point of reference, where there's sort of like there was always the core game, and then I always liked the idea of playing city fight games, but it's sort of it becomes a niche within a niche, or a niche within a niche, as our American cousins tend to say, where it's like you're taking you're drawing from a small pool anyway into a smaller pool, so it's never gonna be popular. Like it's never gonna be super popular, or even like with a board game. If you buy a board game and then you're playing with a specific expansion, and people have to opt into it, it's not gonna happen all the time because you're pulling from that player base, that limited player base anyway.
It has to be worth the effort. Like you're going to learn an entire rule set for one mech, and then expect your opponent to also have a working understanding of how lambs work. It was more effort than I think most people were willing to put into it.
Yeah, I suppose there is that. Then it's the case of how many how many rule books do I need to buy, and how much do I need to keep track of, and what do I need to learn, and effort equaling enjoyment. Am I putting more effort than I'm getting enjoyment out of it? Because that was kind of the decision I had to make with 40k orcs myself. Was like, how much effort am I putting into this hobby, and how much enjoyment am I getting out of it? Am I just sort of chasing nostalgia? So it's the same sort of thing in that regard. Like, I put this much effort in, I don't get equivalent enjoyment out. But if I do that with a different war game like BattleTech, I put a small amount of effort in, and I get a larger output of enjoyment. So it's like, go with the flow, go with what you enjoy.
Couldn't keep up with the 40k stuff. Every with rules changing constantly. Like it's already kind of have this kind of nervous like social anxiety playing in public anyway,
Mm.
and now change the rules every year, and so I'm never quite sure about the specific rules. And like for me, like the worst fear is someone accusing you of cheating when you're like, I just don't know the rule.
Do you know what I find funny? Like, that we don't suffer with BattleTech is because BattleTech is mostly the same game. You don't suffer the issue of where you remember a rule, but it's from like 2 or 3 editions ago because like you played a lot of that edition, and and it's like, oh, but that's not how that works anymore, and you're like, really, what? You know what I mean? So it's like it's almost like you've remembered loads of different games, and then you're trying to learn a new game again. Whereas if you talk to most people about wargaming, the majority of folks 2, 3 games at most. Quite a lot of folks don't really want to learn more than one game or more than a couple of games because you'll start getting confused. Like, I find
Yeah.
myself that if I focus on one game, I can get really into it. You know what I mean? Get down to the nuts and bolts of it. Play it on the regular, where you start learning the hit location tables and you start learning the cluster numbers for your missiles and stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas if I'm playing Bolt Action this week, I'm playing BattleTech that week, I'm playing 40k the next week, it's like it doesn't get as sharp, if you get me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I found that effect happened with 40k, and it was to itself. It did that to itself, where it's a case of it's almost like if you've been playing long enough, you've literally played different games, and they conflict with each other because they all go under the same moniker, the same name. This is 40k. Well, it's like, well, when 40k means different things to different peoples over different eras, whereas BattleTech seems to generally be the same sort of thing. You know what I mean? So if someone offers you a game of BattleTech and you've played it previously, it's roughly going to be what you expect. Like,
And the difference, if there is a difference, it's one that you agree on and you both have a pretty good understanding of how it functions. It's not going to completely change the game.
well, yeah, like from what I understand, the veteran players were telling me one of the things that changed, and it seems for the betterment, was partial cover. Because
Mm-hmm.
in the old school times, apparently partial cover, you got, from what they were saying to me, +3 cover, I think, but it was the punch locations table. So then you were more likely to be headshot. So you were harder to
Mm-hmm.
hit, but you're more likely to be headshot. Whereas it's changed now, where it's uh, +1 to be hit, and it's full body now. But if you hit the legs, then no damage because partial cover, but you're less likely to be hit. So it's like a slight change in the game mechanic, but a change that made sense. It's like, you're not as vulnerable, but you're not as hard to hit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
changes like that, like,
made sense.
that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh well, this actually makes sense. And apparently, like, C3 networks have changed one way and then changed back and then changed another way, and regarding line of sight or something like that. But they're little tiny changes. You know what I mean? It's not a case of we've
You didn't notice that the FAQ dropped last week, and that makes it so this unit is now useless. Like,
your
okay.
special ability has been nerfed and no longer is in effect, and you're like, oh, I'm not taking this in me lance anymore. Yeah. Thankfully, there's that isn't going on. We'll go back to the comment section and
Real
see.
wary of that with the mechs that have quirks. But again,
But
most people I know
don't play
wouldn't
with
play with.
quirks. Yeah, yeah. It's. I suppose it's another layer to make things interesting for folks. I suppose it's a case of once you get to the stage with your game where you've got the basics down and you're pretty solid with them, and you want to add something extra in for a bit of fun, um, like some of the quirks are mad. What is it? There's a few of them they can't do. Like some of the mechs can't do torso twists and stuff like that. So like like some of the quirks fundamentally change how a mech plays, like, which is kind
Some
of
of,
interesting.
like they took a good mech and they, oh, this mech is too good, so now we have to give it a quirk that will make it bad. I don't like that kind of change.
Mm.
I like quirks like what I mentioned before, where if you had a list of random quirks that you rolled for begin before a campaign or before a match, that I'm perfectly fine with. But if you can't take a good mech that's solid, like I don't know, just one off the top of my head, like a stone rhino, and give it some really nasty quirks that now make it a quote unquote bad mech. That to me is that's going down a road that I don't particularly like
So
because then
yeah, neutering it for the sake of it, then just to.
to undo it again. And now you're changing it frequently. You don't
Mm.
want to change all the time because then you end up with another game system that people are not happy with.
Yeah, too much change, I think, is never good for a gaming system. Um, Too much fundamental change because it's like stories. If people keep changing a story, then folk lose interest. They can't sort of attach themselves to it or retell it. If something's constantly mutating or chopping and changing, it's hard to invest yourself in something because you're like, if you invest yourself into a gaming system at that specific point in time, that's what the game is. And if it's constantly changing, you're like, well, hold on, this isn't what I signed up for. You know what I mean? It's like this. It's no longer what I and what I decided to play, and then it's changed into something else, and then somebody else likes that, and
Mhm.
then it'll change again, and then they're not happy because the game that they invested in isn't the game that it is anymore. You know?
Changes should be value added. There should be some substantive reason why you're changing something.
Yeah. Like what would be a good example? Like, did you have one that comes to mind?
For BattleTech,
Well, just in general, like in gaming systems in general, or in Battletech specifically, if you want.
well, the quirks in general, like I kind of mentioned, if you're gonna have quirks that you can add to a mech that make it unique to play, but not necessarily are punitive, then I could see that as being value added positive.
I get you. Without it being detrimental, but adds flavor to the game or adds some.
Destroy someone's favorite mech because you gave it a quirk that they have to then feel like it was something was taken from them. Like, oh, I
Yeah,
really love my assassin, but now it has this horrible quirk that I don't want to play it anymore.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. But nobody wants that to happen to their favorite mech. It's like, oh no, I don't bother playing with quirks because yeah, the force I've built, the quirks are detrimental to them. Um, but yeah, there's only a handful that are like that though. Is there? My general impression is like some of the quirks have been interesting, like compact mechs and stuff like that, so you can take more of them, isn't there? That's that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
some of them can be described as detrimental. You can look at the spider and say no ejection and go, okay, that's clearly detrimental. I can't eject from this mech. But it is also kind of fun in that it forces you to play in a different way.
Hmm.
So sometimes it's just a matter of perspective. Kind of depends on how you play your mech and how you're using it in the game.
Yeah, I suppose if you're forced into a corner like that in regards to no ejecting, you're gonna be a bit more cautious or ropey in regards to what situations you're gonna put yourself into. Which could,
Cautious, thrown caution to the wind. You're like, oh, I'm gonna die anyway. Might as well get into
ah,
the blazing glory. And
go out in a blaze of glory. But I like that though. I like games that sort of bring those type of mechanics because one of my favorite games that I played um back in the day was Battlefleet Gothic, the tabletop version for Games Workshop, and I liked how the game played and was designed was really with campaign play because the detriment to that game was in one-off games people would just play hell for leather and would just, it's a one-off game. I don't care about my losses. But I like it when games have the sort of, you have to play in the long game. So, when stuff starts to break and you're getting to the point where you're like, I might lose my ship or my miniature or whatever. I'll disengage it now so I can conserve it and repair it later. I like those sort of games because the play style totally changes then. Totally changes. You know what I mean? If you're thinking long term, I can't afford to replace this ship. I can fix it and I can repair it. Or even in regards to a campaign with mechs, I like how campaigns can really affect how people play. These are your limited resources. You can kind of patch them and keep them going, but if you lose them, it's gonna be pretty detrimental. So like, it really changes things. I find that very interesting. How the psychology shifts altogether.
Sure. Yeah, especially when you're playing around with those win conditions. Like it's not just about destroying the last mech on the board. You're trying to accomplish something where if your uh, battle value drops below 70% or something like that, where you have to really start thinking about, okay, can I give up this mech in this situation and not have it for the next one? So playing campaigns completely changes how you play.
It does. It really does. It's like, and your priorities shift as well. It's like, right, okay, we're going on a mission raid. We're gonna go in and steal their ammo. We need mechs with hand actuators so they can actually pick up the crates and run off with them. What do we have that can do this? That's fast enough to pull it off. You know what I mean? You're like, so your priorities for what mechs to bring as well, and which mechs you're gonna do which role. That changes too. Or maybe you're doing an extraction of an individual, so you have to run up and scout ahead and find out where the enemy force is or whatever. So you're the mechs that typically when you're just knocking lumps out of each other, um, aren't front and center. Don't get a sort of central role in the game. You know, they will in games with specific objectives. You have to run up and get to this hex, and someone will jump onto your mech or whatever, and then get out with them. It's like, oh, me locust, I can do that. The locust can run up the side and get that done, while the other guys keep the enemy forces busy. You know what I mean? Whereas typically you wouldn't be as focused on using your locust as the main player for the mission. You know what I mean? You can get various use out of mechs that otherwise wouldn't, or you have to hold out for so long, and yeah, multiple scenarios that you can come up with.
Yeah, hopefully the CGL will come out with some of those things revamped. Maybe they can look back at some of those older source books and come out with some really good campaign books in the future.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see some stuff revamped, because there's a load of little sort of scenario books. I got my hands on a couple of them. I haven't had a chance to go over them in detail, but I've played some missions with friends, and it's interesting because it'll give you like, this is the map, this is the orientation, these are where these guys deploy, and they come out and these guys have pre-damage, and here's the lore of what happened beforehand and the context of where it's at. So like it's, yeah, the sort of like the D&D, like pre-gens, isn't it? Where the pre-made dungeons and pre-made scenarios, where you can just sort of pick it up and just play through it with your friends. If you don't want to sit down and make all the scenarios yourself, having those sort of books is useful in that regard. Or just something you can pick off the shelf. Oh, what will we do today? Hey, look, let's just play one of these. You know.
You can get your hand on any of those old source books, like the Luthien campaign book. Those are so great because you're getting so much of that backstory about what happened, but then you're playing out the battles, and I've always loved that. Even if I don't actually play the battles, it's just fun to have the book and read through it and go, all right, well, this is how I would play it if I were going to sit down and play this battle. So,
or even the context of the lore as well. I like how that's done in Battletech. Like if you're picking up your TROs or whatever, it's usually given the prefix of like, this was written by someone in a specific timeline, so the information they had at the time was correct in this context. But they may not have all the facts at the time. You know what I mean? So this is their impression of how it was. So
so we're doing, because when I've been trying to get through the Word of Blake source books, the 4 that cover the Dark Age, and those are all written almost entirely with a narrator that you can't trust, and so you really have no idea what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
So there's you can go too far with the unreliable narration. You're like, I've been reading, I'm 80 pages into the source book. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. This is just pure wobby like propaganda. Like it's so biased in one regard. But then I find that interesting because it leaves it open for another perspective to be thrown in later on, and you're like, oh, okay, you know what I mean?
I can get it for like novels, but when it's a source book, I need to know what actually happened, or at least a facsimile that's marginally reliable rather than the word of Blake point of view over.
That they're hard and
Oh,
fast of it. But I like that there's like this conspiracy theories and everything in like in the game. Like there's all sorts of like conspiracies, and then how some of them were true in the end in lore. You know what I mean?
who even knows? Like the best argument for pointing out that it didn't go very well is ask anybody what actually happened during the Dark Age, and most people are like, I have no idea.
Mm.
Because even if you try to sit down and read the source books, you're
Oh
you might
yeah, yeah.
actually.
So it's like it's just even if someone was steeped in the lore, read up everything on it, and they're like, yeah, nobody knows, nobody knows. Yeah,
Oh, who bombarded this planet? Oh well, this group says this one did it, and this group said this one did it. Like, okay, that doesn't really help me.
it doesn't nail things down. I suppose. Yeah, you don't want things too loose at the same time. There needs to be some sort of solid ground to stand on in regards to the lore to actually become invested in it.
Yeah. You gotta have feet on the ground at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Heritage Junction is saying, "Hey, any new in for Thursday? Are we this Thursday coming up? I don't think so. I don't think we've anything new at the moment. I do help. I run like a little sort of store for our gaming. When we do our gaming, I buy in stuff because it's hard to get a hold of BattleTech stuff. It's not really well stocked in a lot of the local gaming stores. So I started up like just getting the box sets in so the guys can get their hands on them and you know what I mean, because it's not as common here. I mean, it's growing, but BattleTech I find seems to be the biggest market tends to be America from my impression of it. Like it was really big in the States and it still really is. Like these guys can buy it in like Barnes and Noble and stuff, can't you?
Yeah, a lot of local game shops occasionally have a very small selection of BattleTech. Like
Mm.
I make a point. I've got a local shop here that's adding more over time because every time I go in there, I ask about it, and then I make sure I buy something. Like even if I don't necessarily need, oh, there's a box of mechs, I got to pick this up. But hopefully, it's going to keep growing. I think 2023 is going to be a huge year for BattleTech. With that, the Kickstarter is going to be better than most people predict. I think
Yeah,
so.
I think it has exploded. Like they've they've quoted some of the production numbers of the box sets, and like it seems to be that more of it's sold now than like previous iterations. Like the numbers that they're doing, the hundreds of thousands or whatever. Don't quote me on the direct numbers, but it's going really well. It's growing. It's very popular, and it seems to keep growing. It's gained more and more momentum, and I think it surprised the guys at Catalyst as well. How big that first Kickstarter was. Like it was
Yeah,
massive. Like what was it?
be the amount of product that actually exists. Like how many times do people go to the store hoping to find BattleTech and walk away empty-handed? That's a lost sale. So
Hmm.
the limitation is getting stuff on the shelf. That's a good problem to have. Much better than like people not wanting to buy your stuff, but it is still a problem that hopefully they're working on with having the Kickstarter pushed back to March instead of the end of last year. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Like I find that happens here as well. Like is when BattleTech stuff comes and lands on store shelves, like it doesn't stick around for long. You know what I mean? That was the whole incentive to get a gaming group going. It's like right, somebody's buying this that isn't us, right? There's players out here. We just need to find them and then get
Mhm.
games going. And lo and behold, like we'll have 14, 16 players 12 players, pretty consistent gaming group, and it's good fun. Like it's always good fun. It's great seeing the community growing, seeing what makes people buy in, and folk
Absolutely.
asking you what box set should I buy, and I can only buy one box set, and I'm looking, like, what should I get? It's like, well, what are you looking to do? Do you want to do clan? Or are you doing sphere? And what's your play style? Do you like, long range support? Do you like the heavier mix? Maybe you want medium mix moving around, and each of the different lances, the way that they are, the composition of them. This mech might fit in really well, but you may not want these two, or they'll say that they don't like this. Oh, somebody I know will want to spare one of them. They'll swap you one of these other mechs for it, and then that's fun. I like seeing that. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Absolutely.
People engaging and then just enjoying the hobby. And then it's from all ages as well. We have really young guys, and then we have chaps older than me. Like, so it's across the board. It's fun.
Yeah. There's an opportunity there for BattleTech as people kind of realize, hey, there's a deeper level of wargaming that's been kind of neglected for a while as Warhammer 40K and AOS was a thing that's kind of they've been on the simplifying route. Well, what about this where you can get into the nitty gritty and like, all right, well, 10 damage here and 5 damage here. So it gives you all sorts of opportunity to get much more strategic and kind of much closer to a game of chess than it is a game of Warhammer 40K where you're just moving these huge piles of models all over the place and hoping that things work out your way.
Well, that's like one of the aspects of the game that I really enjoy is like the initiative phase and movement, and then like damage being simultaneous, and you're doing alternate activations, and it really is for a moment like you're saying there. It's like a game of chess because I'm like, right, you know,
Fundamentally more fair too
yeah,
than
exactly.
playing.
Like that, the whole damage being simultaneous makes it more fair is as well, because it's a case of, oh, you've killed me this phase, but I still get me damage. So I've seen it happen where you get two mechs killing each other in the same turn. Like you know, that's always interesting.
The fact that you win or lose depends entirely upon who goes first.
Yes. Oh, you've
Why
got
even
the
play the
first turn. You've wiped half my army. It was like, well, good game. Oh, we have to finish playing it. It's like, listen here, buddy. We both know.
no, I've lost the game. That's brutal. But that's never the case in BattleTech because you could always get that one lucky shot. You never know when that Gauss rifle is going to hit somebody in the head and completely change the outcome of the battle.
Or someone gets a true armor critical, and that's another thing as well. Like, because of the displacement of the damage, and the fact that there are criticals, you could play the same game with the same lineup of mechs, and even try and use the same tactics, but you might have a totally different end result.
Mm-hmm. I play a ton of board games as well with my family and friends. And the best games are the games where you don't know if you're winning or losing. I mean, you can always count points and kind of watch what the other player's doing and have a pretty good idea of who's ahead. But you have a game where you really don't know if you won for sure until the points are counted at the end. That's a game that everybody's invested in until the end, and that's part of why BattleTech is, I think, successful. Because people are like, all right, I know I'm losing. I'm down a mech, or I'm down 2 mechs, but who knows? On this next roll, I might pull it out and get out and hit this thing in the engine and get a gyro hit or whatever I need to do to win.
Yeah, yeah, because it's brilliant when that happens. Like you're down and out. You're being absolutely mauled, and it's like, the game's not going well for me. I think he's got this one, and then suddenly someone's ammo gets hit on the opposing side, or someone's pilot gets knocked out, or the gyro gets damaged and they fall over, and there can be those instances that change the dynamic of the game, but at the same time, it doesn't it's not detrimental to the game. You know what I mean? Where if you were playing a game and that happened too often, or
Well, yeah, if it's down, if you go too far with it, then it just becomes all right. It all boils down to a roll.
yeah, it's random. It's like there's enough of it in BattleTech. I find there's enough of that sort of random element to make the game exciting without taking away from the game. Where it's like, it. No matter what we do, the end result's always going to be random. So there's no point. You get me? There's just
So
enough
much,
of it sprinkled in.
so much of game design is a balance between the skill and the RNG, and finding a good balance so that the player feels like they have control over whether or not they win or lose, but it's not entirely. There's always a chance that something could go wrong, which of course is fits perfectly with a war game, because what war goes exactly as you plan, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. It's like, your plans only last as soon as you contact the enemy, really, isn't it?
Mhm.
The best laid plans. I butchered that quote, but you know what I meant. We'll see who's harping on in the comment section. As before, I seem to be missing quite a lot of it.
It being the J word instead of the Dark Age. I tend to use the two labels interchangeably. I know they're not technically the same thing, but a lot of older players just call it the Dark Age because that's what the new novels at the time were called when they switch over to the Hero Click system. Just habit. Plus
Ah,
YouTube.
it's Jihad, not
YouTube had
Dark Age. Yes, yes, Harrison. Yeah.
David. So
We have Lorcan saying Battletech sold better in the 90s, but this is the best it's done since the heyday.
mm,
But I suppose, yeah, it seemed to have a bit more of a cultural splash back in the day because there was cartoons and there was the pods, the battle pods for gaming in. Um,
always pretty darn niche. It was never, you would never run into anybody on the street who had heard of BattleTech but haven't played it.
ah,
You might in a gaming store or something, but you know.
it's always been niche. But so, do you think
Last
like it's more? Do you think there's more of a
third,
splash now?
oh, I think it's much closer to mainstream now than it ever was in the 90s.
Yeah, that's what
Now
I
that
thought.
being a nerd is cool in the last decade, a lot of that's changed. Like you ask somebody if they've heard of Warhammer, most people are gonna like, oh yeah, they at least know something about it because they've seen something. And that's gonna be the same way for BattleTech here. Oh yeah, I've seen those little mechs or
Yeah, give
this
it
show
enough
on
time.
YouTube.
Maria saying, I wish Battletech blind boxes were divided between clans and IS to making playing drafts with 4 boxes easier. Hmm.
Hmm.
It'd be interesting if there was something like that. So you could do, like, we've toyed with the idea of doing, you know what they do with Magic the Gathering, where they do blind booster drafts and do events. It'd be fun to do something like that for BattleTech with the blind boxes, but it's trying to
Shield.
balance it out between someone getting like a super light mech and then someone gets like a Daishi or whatever, you know.
Hoplite, I got the Atlas, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, trying to balance it out, like, because BV can only go so far. You know what I mean in regards to upping the pilot skill. It's like we could make you a 0-0 pilot, but if you've only got 2 medium lasers and then you're fighting an Atlas, like it's like you know.
You could blind draw a box and then supplement it up to a point value, or at least try to do weights or something like that. So, all right, you got the 80-ton mech, I got a 20, so your second mech has to be under this weight, and mine can be this one, and then you pick your second one based upon uh, an attempt to even things out.
Or do a swap out. I suppose you could have a line of mechs that people could swap out, but they're not uber powerful. They're sort of mid table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could try that way. Yeah.
Yeah, those Eric mentioned those pods at the World Wizards of the Coast store in Seattle. We went there, and my buddies and I went to um, GameWorks. It was called GameWorks in Seattle, and it had the pods. Played
Yeah.
some battle back when that was the closest thing you could get to really accurate video games with battle mechs.
I mean, I'm surprised someone hasn't tried to do something like that now for conventions, because with the technology that we have now, you could easily make pods like that. You know what I mean? It wouldn't
I
take
know
much. They wouldn't be
there are
expensive.
those pods that have been sold whenever they come out to auction.
What, they make go for crazy money, or?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I think maybe some of the novelty might have worn off just because our home gaming systems are
I suppose
so
it's a different era now. But I could definitely see it being something that like, uh,
playing MechWarrior 3 at the time, MechWarrior 2, MechWarrior 3 at the time. So seeing a mech in that good a resolution, and of course you're surrounded by all those screens and buttons and flashing, all that. The novelty is maybe a little bit different today because we're kind of used to being surrounded by buttons and flashing things.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of like the controllers and stuff like that, but we have 3D tech now, so you could easily sort of, yeah, you could easily pull it off. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's doable. You know, just three, four, yeah, four sets, and you could, or even 8 sets, and just like run MechWarrior 5 or whatever, and just have them fight each other. You know, Lance v Lance. That could be doable. Yeah, it could be feasible. I mean, it'd be expensive with eight VR headsets, but I'm sure there's VR places knocking around. And like we're saying, in the 90s, the novels were really big sellers. You get them in every bookshop, and a decent SF section. They were bigger than the game. I think this
Yeah, I
is.
was an interview. I think one of the BattleTech authors was saying, yeah, they sold a ton of books in the 90s, and then now the novels don't sell very much at all. So it's kind of a shift. Being a former teacher, it's kind of depressing, but like no one reads anymore.
Or books, be people buying books and consuming them. Yeah, I suppose because it's all digital now. It's all on your phone or your tablet or PC if you have a PC. It's all.
Yeah, nobody sits down and reads a novel anymore. It's
Hmm. I suppose that's just sort of a sign of the times.
true.
Madcat352 was saying 90% of people would only buy the Inner Sphere blind boxes. That's if they were divided up into Inner Sphere and Clan. I don't know. Like in my local gaming group, the tends to. I think quite a lot of them like the Clan stuff.
Yeah, I'd be curious how that would break down because you've got most people are into either the 3025 or 3050 with the clans invasion. That's probably the vast majority of your player base. Um, I don't know. Being a clanner, I'm not biased at all.
I'll be honest. I prefer Inner Sphere myself. Um, I don't know why. I just prefer to look at them like that. Maybe it's the sort of Succession Wars era idea. I like the idea of the tech base being more degraded, and like that idea of mechs being rarer, and it's not as easy to replace stuff. Um, and I think maybe because like heat management, I find that sort of an enjoyable element of the game, and then I found that sort of got my impression. I would say is that element of the game became a bit more diminished with like bringing in
The re-
double heat sinks and stuff.
yeah, the game completely changed with that. Sure.
So I find the game changes a bit. But that's not to say that I don't like playing clan stuff or I don't like playing clan era stuff. It's just given a choice, I like playing Succession Wars.
Yeah, and that's cool. I have run into a few people over the years who are very malicious about not liking the clans, and they're like a little friendly rivalry is always good and funny. But occasionally it gets like, oh, f those clanners, they're garbage. They ruin the game. Like, okay,
I was waiting for they ruined the game. It used to be great. I was like, when
just
did it
go
happen? Back
way out of the chat room.
still bitter about it. Like 30 something. When was it? It was the early 90s when the clanners came in, wasn't it? Yeah, still bitter. 30 odd years later, I think it's time someone built the bridge. You know,
Or at least maybe let it go.
either are an option. Either.
Some wounds can heal. I think that one can heal after 30 years.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
if they stop
first,
picking at it, yeah.
yeah, my first box of mechs was the medium Omnimex. And we were down at the shop and they had the two source books for Clan Wolf and Jade Falcon. And our friend, my buddies and I were like, I don't know, these wolves seem kind of lame. We're gonna go with Jade Falcons, and then the rest is history.
And it all went downhill from there, huh?
And we got to see the glorious clan fall and get dragged down into the mud in the Ill Clan era.
Oh yeah, I'd say you guys must have been less than impressed with the whole Ill Clan shenanigans. And I'm like, I picked the mercenary faction, so I have no horse in this race at all.
Yeah, like playing clan, you kind of accept the fact that you're not the good guys in like there are no good
I was
guys in
about to say,
Battletech.
yeah,
Is what it's
that's what I like though. There are no good guys. It's like these are all bastards, just at different levels.
closer on the spectrum to closer to more bad guy than good guy with the clans. You kind of accept that. You're like, all right, we're not the good guys, and that's okay. But then with the O clan, if I have any sort of critique of the O clan, is just using Malvina and making her into like the comic book supervillain in order to make Alaric look good. And so you have all sorts of situations where Alaric is trying to get allies, and they're like, "Yeah, you're kind of a jerk, but you're not as bad as
But it's
Malvina, so I guess I'll help you." Like, that's not a ringing endorsement. Ugh,
you're the lesser of two evils. Okay, we'll go with you.
I'm I'm not bitter. I'll get over it. I just complained somebody else was not should get over it, so I will get over
Oh,
it.
well, you're following your own advice. Good man yourself. Uh,
They'll move on. They weren't completely wiped out, so I'm okay.
Lorcan is saying in the comment section the current versions are basically a slick gaming rig running MechWarrior 4, an elaborate control system. This is in regards to the pods. So if I was saying just make a proper VR mech game, yeah, I'm surprised. I don't know if MechWarrior 5 is VR compatible. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Mind you, VR headsets are pretty niche. You know what I mean? I find
I
it
think I've
funny.
seen something on YouTube where someone hooked their set up to it and got it to work.
That'd
They
be
were looking around the cockpit.
That'd be pretty cool. But I find it funny, like, I remember, like, I was only a young lad at the time, but I remember VR being a thing back in the 90s, and then it was going to be this craze that took over the world, and then it didn't happen. And then the second sort of iteration of it, of VR was going to take over the world, and it didn't happen again. It's like, right, okay. Yeah, I find that amusing for some reason or another. It's like a new technology craze comes in, it's gonna change the world, and then it doesn't for one reason or another.
Well, it's never quite the thing you expect to change the world, right? There's
Yeah,
that
exactly. It,
all the quotes from the 90s saying that the internet's just going to be this fad and not going to have that much of an impact, and then here we are.
yeah,
And it changed everything.
it literally changes everything. It's quite hilarious. Emery was saying people were buying, restoring, and reprogramming Showbiz Pizza, Rockafire Explosion, animatronic bands. So I'm sure someone is trying to make VR sets for BattleTech, just they do for flight sim racers, etc. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure there is somebody doing it.
Find a place that had a big enough market and build a community around it, get people to show up. I'm sure.
Lorcan was saying apparently the ebook POD paradigm is working well for CGL's fiction. They were trying to do conventional print runs and getting nowhere. Oh, I suppose, yeah, if you buy from them, you can buy a book and you get like a PDF off them as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that they'll do an official Ill Clan technical readout. And I'm not a big fan of the having to buy the $4 PDF every couple of weeks.
Ah,
I,
yeah.
re-
Where they go.
I like books. I've got shelves full of books. I like physical
I'm the
books.
same. Yeah, yeah. I think that is the plan. I think from what I understand, they'll do a technical readout, but it won't have absolutely everything that the little PDFs have had. From what I've
Mhm.
heard, whether that's true or not is another thing. But yeah, from what I understand, they're going to do a TRO for the same reason, where it's like I'm more into books myself. That sort of tactile experience of it.
Yeah.
Because trying to sit down and read a book on a phone or a digital device is just like it's bad enough for me trying to read books as it is, let alone trying to read it on a screen. It's just like and real books as well. I need the real book there. Just I don't know what it is. It maybe it's just my generation. Maybe the younger kids, these Zoomers or whatever, um, don't find it as much of an issue. But I find that I find it a lot easier to reference rules and get through rule books with a physical rule book in front of me, something to quickly reference. And
Yeah.
other people, you know,
Yeah, and
may be different.
I don't like anything that sort of throws up roadblocks to enjoying the game. And so if CGL really wants IlClan to be a thing, they need to make it as easy as possible to get caught up and get into it. And so if you send somebody to the website and they have to pay for 12 tiny TROs to get all those updates, they're going to look at that and say, even if the amount of money would be the same, they're going to look at that and like, I have to really download 12 PDFs and go through 12 different PDF. I'm not doing that.
Well, I think
so
I
hopefully
think
they a solid, like, here's the Lorcan mentioned in chat there, getting a 2-part print release, amazing. Do that, please.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like those little bit releases are for like the established players, and then like a 2-part print release would be on the money.
Yep. Make it as easy as possible to play, and people will show up. Don't throw up roadblocks.
Dublin Battletech is saying you have to get over it. I think this is in regards to me not buying into a specific faction. Battletech is all about the fun of falling in love with a faction and then watching as you laid waste just as you finish your force. Yeah, but you see, I collected 40k orcs in Warhammer 40k, and they just get shit on from on high constantly. So it's like, you can understand my hesitation. You played a Xenos faction, that is an Elder. Well, you know, good luck to you. It's like, I know I'm cannon fodder already. I know. Don't worry about it. But it's been crazy fun. We've already reached like 2 hours. I have enjoyed the chat. I didn't manage to get much hobby done myself. I got some base.
I didn't get. I don't think I would have been very productive anyway.
No, regardless, it was an absolutely enjoyable chat. I enjoy talking about Battletech with anyone who's also into Battletech, and even people who aren't into Battletech. Anyone willing to listen, it's always fun.
Poor Mrs. MacFrog, she gets it all. You're really going to talk about Melvina again? Can you give it a rest? No. All right. No, it was fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope everyone else managed to get a lot of hobby done as well. Like I said, I didn't get much done myself, but sure, that's just an added convenience if painting happens. It's been more than a blast, and I'm sure it would be great to have you on again in the hopefully not too distant future. And I look forward to more of your videos. I am looking forward to. I do watch them. I do like them. I like your little clips as well. Your little head to heads where you've got your painted mechs, your verses. They look nice, man. And you paint you paint quite a bit as well, in comparison to me, which is it's inspiring. I like it. It's always like, oh look, I see the way he's painted that one now. Yeah, it's good fun.
It's going to be a good year, I think. We'll look back on 23 and say this was a good year for Battletech.
I agree 100%. So to everybody else watching, thanks for checking out the video. Hit the like button, it helps with the algorithms, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe for more content. And check out Mech Frogs or Mechanical Frogs channel. It'll be on the channel for channels to subscribe to and in the description for this video. So go check him out. He has some absolutely great content, great painting videos, great lore. What's not to love? More Battletech content. So thanks for watching, folks, and take it easy.